we are back. It's Joe Hoft here on the Joe Hoft Show here at Untamed Nation. So grateful to be here. Had a interesting discussion with Joe Altman this morning. The show and the podcast is doing absolutely fantastic. We're like in the top 0.1% in some ratings at a website out there, Listen Notes. It's really pretty exciting for that. People that watch our show stay on our show and obviously like our shows. So, uh, an honor to be part of this group. Um, so, just wanted to mention that this morning. Lots going on in the news. We're going to cover all that. We've got an incredible guest, too, especially uh, related to the events going on in the country this weekend as well as today. So, lots going on. It's been a real hectic morning for me. I want to start off the show though by reminding you in a couple weeks, I guess. I was thinking it was going to be this weekend, but no, it's 2 weekends from today, the 4th through the 6th. I will, April 4th through 6th, I will be in St. Louis, actually in St. Charles County, St. Charles, Missouri, for an event sponsored by United Sovereign Americans. Myself and Ann Vandersteel, our keynote speakers, I'll be there speaking at noon on Saturday and that evening. So, should be a great time. A lot of information. I've been really interested in some of the things United Sovereign Americans has done. I thought from the start when I first heard about them and what they were doing, how spot on they were, and so I'm just honored to be there with them. So, anyways, if you can make it, get there. It should be a lot of fun. Tickets right now are $150. There's some left, but I encourage you to go out there and grab a couple, and at the very least, if you can't, maybe you can donate. There's a way to donate on that page too. I've put it up at joehoff.com. You can go to United Sovereign Americans as well. Look that up. I think it's unitedforfreedom.com or org. That's how you can get their website. But just look it up and it'll pull up. And hope to see you there. It should be an incredible time. A lot of great information, and there's so much going on in this space that it's going to be pretty exciting as well. So appreciate all your support in that event and in supporting this show, joehoff.com and Untamed Nation. And it's just, great to be here. So, yeah, thanks so much for that. As another piece that I put up this morning from USA, United Sovereign Americans, has to do with the elections. And this is an important piece, and I wanted to kind of share this with you uh, briefly here. This was Harry Hari and Marley Hornick put this together from United Sovereign Americans, and it's pretty powerful. The and it kind of coincides with my background. Now, Harry Hari really understands cyber as well as the HAVA Act, the laws in place in our election uh, industry in the United States. And the point of this article is that a couple of things I've highlighted in bold. Possibly the worst example of derelict critical infrastructure management is our voting system. So, CISA and this group within Homeland Security has has mandated that certain things happen in the United States, and this was a few years back in regards to securing our elections, securing everything that's on the list from CISA that involves basically America's interests and protecting those things that we need protected, especially like putting a border around not just our country, but around our data. And that's what this whole effort was about. Well, if you go through this article, you can see how Marley and Harry note some of these things that there's supply chains that provide materials for our election systems. And these supply chains, they're open to hostile penetration and capture because they're not being properly tested, vetted, and brought into operation. Um, some of these machines, many are not even hardened properly, which is the things that need to be done whenever you bring systems on board in any entity. In the corporate world, we had IT teams that were managing all this, and they were sharp people, and it was it's a big issue for all corporations today. You've got to protect your data. Not so much in our election universe, that's for sure. So when voting equipment is sourced abroad, CISA must prove that these imported elements do not grant Americans' enemies a backdoor into subverting our culture or stealing trillions of dollars through Manchurian candidates and bogus election results. And right now, it's just not working. They go on to say that did CISA perform and ask the question, did CISA perform a comprehensive RMF analysis before authorizing systems for use in federal elections? The answer is no. And so this is a troubling aspect with our elections, these systems. The problem with the systems is, as I noted in my second book on the elections, I've written three on the steal. The second one chapter, I talk about how these systems aren't in compliance. There's certain mandates they're not in compliance, similar to what Harry's saying here. And then I went through the systems and note that these systems have been, by the CISA itself, has written a report that says the Dominion systems used in Georgia, they're not secure. Bad actors could hack into them, and bad actors could flip an election. And so, why are we using these things? Well, it doesn't make any sense, and that's why we still have a lot of problems with our elections today that need to be fixed. Only Trump's going to do it. Joe Biden wasn't going to do it because his cronies got him in office because of not no other reason because of these gaps in our election system. So great piece by them. I wanted to bring it to your attention. It's also out at the Gateway Pundit. So take a look. It's a little high level, a little heady too, but I think you'll enjoy it and understand we're in a crisis. I think here in our elections, and I'll be sharing some of that actually in a couple weeks there in St. Louis. So, anyways, I want to bring that to your attention. Now, this past week, we saw Trump going, the battle has begun against the deep state, and Trump's gone back. He's gone back 60 years to begin this battle because that's where we first saw the deep state take out a U.S. president. And the information released last week showed massive collusion amongst the CIA and other entities, the mob, and even foreign entities as well in this assassination of John F. Kennedy. Another piece came out, and I saw it last week, and I was like, "Is that true? Is that made up? Is that it? AI?" And no, it was that. It's actually an audio that of a phone conversations between Jackie Kennedy and LBJ. He took over the presidency after the assassination. And a month after that assassination, they held this phone call, which is just wild. So take a look at this.
Hello?
Hello?
Jackie?
Mr. President?
I love you.
Oh, I see, sweet. Where are you?
You just skipped away from this town. I ought to had you arrested.
But I was so mad at myself.
Yeah, well, you ought to be mad. You almost made me mad at you leaving without coming by and hugging me and telling me goodbye.
Yeah, but did you get my note?
Yes, I did. And
I talked to Ladybird. I felt so stupid.
Well, I miss you, and I'm thinking of you, and I know your Christmas won't be what it ought to be, but I wish that I could make it happier. When I got ready to go to home for my Christmas, the Congress just said they'd spank me and hit me right in the face and wouldn't let me go, and that's the way I want to do you next time if you don't tell me goodbye.
Oh, listen, as soon as you get back, I'll come and get a vitamin B shot from Dr. Travell.
Won't you do that?
Yeah.
Won't you do that?
Yeah.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
Bye.
That's a month after JFK's assassination. That's pretty wild. Alex Jones explained it, saying uh, he said this. He says the JFK was known for having parties. This vitamin D shot refers to amphetamines that he would take for his back, and pretty soon everybody was taking it, and it was they were doing drugs. That's what they were doing and partying, and there's apparently rumors that Jackie Kennedy, Jacqueline Onassis, was involved in a lot of this as well. We certainly knew LBJ. I've read this before. He's a real womanizer his entire life. So What in the world? Who would have expected that type of phone conversation between those two? Now, finally released 60 years later, more than 60 years, they released that. So I hope everything comes out because this is really bizarre. President Trump, I don't know if there's any connection to Jackie Kennedy and what Trump's doing, but he wants to update the Rose Garden. He says there's grass there, and they hold all these big events on the grass, and he says people are walking around with high heels and stuff. It's not working, and he wants to put in a patio type structure like he has at Mar-a-Lago, where it's more like a cement platform, probably nice bricks and really actually real nice bricks. And that's what he wants to put at the White House. So people aren't sinking. But that's tearing up Jackie's garden. And people are like, why is he doing that? Does he know something about it, Jackie O, that we don't know? But this weekend, President Trump said no, he thinks he doesn't, he didn't say much about that at all. So there's some people asking him about it. So that has certainly been big news across the country over these past over the past week, all this information coming out, as we noted last week, about the JFK files. Wild stuff. Certainly the CIA was involved. George Bush was involved. We saw a letter from J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, to his top staff saying anything related to the assassination, make sure you tie in G.W. Bush, who was working for the CIA at the time. There's been rumors that Bush was there and there's some pictures. People say that's George Bush. Um, I have never given him a lot of credibility, but now we've got a letter showing absolutely that he's involved. One guy that's doing a great job is Roger Stone. He's written books about this. He indicts LBJ in the assassination attempt at JFK, but he doesn't disregard the fact that the CIA through LBJ and even the mafia were involved as well. LBJ wanted to be president. There was rumors also that he was going to be removed from the ticket in JFK's second term. Anyways, that's why he did it. Some people said the CIA had their reasons because JFK was ready to end the CIA. And the mafia had reasons too, because the Kennedy's father was a big, big, big bootlegger during the Prohibition period, and so I think that's the right term. So there's all sorts of players, bad people involved, and actually, uh, Alex Jones mentioned that Jackie O went to tie up with this Onassis, who was a big time world, basically, he called him a world uh, mafia type guy. So wild stuff, wild. So, anyways, that was that I found that when that came out, I wasn't sure that was true. Now I'm like, well, it was, and this kind is like, what the hell's going on? It's unreal, wild. So. Anyway, speaking about wild, there's some other big stuff happened this weekend. AOC and Bernie Sanders got together for an event, and yeah, you'll see this occurred in this was a picture of an event in Colorado. They claimed the AOC and Bernie's team claimed more than 30,000 people were there. The papers in Colorado, 30,000 people show up for AOC and Bernie, and I didn't think that crowd looked like it. And this is exactly what they did in 2016. And I started keeping track in 2016 of the rallies, comparing Hillary to President Trump. Trump had rallies that were huge. Hillary had these rallies that were tiny, and they kept saying hers were about three times bigger than they really were, and Trump's were about a third of what they really were. And Trump set records at all these venues. How many arenas across this country have their record-setting attendance from President Trump events? It's even up in Alaska, he's shattered records. So anyways, that's what they did this weekend. They're trying to say that there's 30,000 people there. I found some information online. This guy says, well, they looked at all the phone data, and of that phone data, some unbelievably, really startling information on what's who really was at these events. Remember, they were doing this during Kamala's um, events, whatever you call them, where they'd find out that these people are being bussed in because it's the same people that were just at Kamala's last rally. And it's all astroturf for the left and has been for a very long time, since before Hillary. And since back to Obama, Obama had some big events, but those people were even being bussed around. So we don't know what the real number is behind the dims, but it's not very much. But this guy, Tony Saruga, says that after looking at the phone data, et cetera, they could tell that there was only 10,000 people in that picture. And they had only 20,000 devices that they identified, independent devices at. So during, and then they realized that's just during the day, 20,000. By the time that picture came around, it was only 10,000. And 84% of the devices that they identified had attended 9 or more Kamala Harris rallies. Is that unbelievable? Antifa, Black Lives Matters, pro Hamas, pro Palestinian protests. 31% have attended over 20 of those events. So unbelievable. And these people are getting paid, is what's going on. They're getting paid to show up. And there's some big nonprofits and NGOs. Probably, actually, some of these were listed: Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, Indivisible Project, Troublemakers, and Democrats, Socialists of America. Some of these are 501c4s, some are not. Each receives money from Act Blue, and at least 3 of those entities receive money from USAID. So go figure. And that's the rally this weekend again, AstroTurf. So don't believe the media when they tell you 30,000 people were there. It's just simply not true. Related to that, we have some information uh, from this individual who does the Dilbert cartoon. He talked about these rallies and events over the weekend. Scott Adams, I believe that's his name, and he had this analysis. So take a look.
You know that AOC and Bernie are doing these big rallies, and you probably said to yourself, "Are these rallies organic, or is somebody paying people to go to them?" But 84% of the devices, which means the people who own them, attended 9 or more Kamala Harris rallies, or Antifa, BLM, pro-Hamas, or pro-Palestinian, and 31% of them had attended over 20. Now, how do you attend 9 or more Democrat rally events? Because they're not all in your town. There would be travel, and you'd have to take time off from your job if you had one. These have to be paid, right? So it's looking to me like the entire Democratic Party, where their popularity, at least for their congressional leaders, is the lowest it's been in a long time. It looks to me they're trying to create what looks like an artificial popularity by simply paying people to protest and paying people to go to rallies. Yeah, it looks like they're rally professionals. Exactly.
Rally professionals, says the man who created Dilbert. So, anyways, unbelievable stuff. Here's another piece that I noticed just this morning about what's going on. Many of these people, as you know, they attended, like it's noted in that article, Black Lives Matters, Kamala Harris rallies, etc. But many of these people too are been pro climate, anti climate change, pro climate initiatives, etc. And yet now we're seeing what we think are the same people basically um, protesting Tesla and even going against what they were saying in the past. Tesla was maybe the best example of green energy, and now they're going after him. So take a look at this.
Dernière génération Canada, un collectif de gens ordinaires qui demande à ce que le gouvernement canadien instaure un comité de protection face aux désastres climatiques pour protéger la population canadienne des dangers de la crise climatique.
Nous avons pris action aujourd'hui parce que nous ne pouvons plus supporter de voir le profit prendre priorité sur la vie. Les milliardaires et les plus ultra riches sont en train de détruire notre futur pour leur propre gain.
Le gouvernement canadien préfère investir dans les grandes compagnies comme Tesla plutôt que d'investir à protéger la population alors que des centaines de milliers de personnes sont renvoyées chez eux et que des personnes de notre âge meurent en nous protégeant.
C'est pourquoi nous demandons la création d'une agence de protection afin de protéger ceux et celles qui ne sont pas capables de se permettre un service de pompier privé ou de se faire construire une maison pour protéger les inondations.
Nous n'allons pas mourir pour les grandes compagnies. On va pas donner notre avenir aux ultra-riches.
Nous avons essayé les bonnes façons de faire. On est sortis dans les rues, on a signé les pétitions, mais rien n'a été fait pour nous assurer notre survie face à la crise climatique.
C'est pour ça qu'on est là aujourd'hui, à déranger le petit train-train du quotidien. C'est parce que c'est la seule façon de vraiment se faire entendre.
Nous sommes dernière génération au Canada. Rejoignez-nous dans les rues ce printemps pour montrer que vous aussi, vous n'êtes pas prêts à vous laisser mourir pour les profits de quelqu'un d'autre.
Aidez-nous à ne pas être la dernière génération du Canada.
That was obviously in French. The interpretation was there for you. Uh, Apparently in Quebec, I would guess someplace in Canada. But so now they're going after Teslas. We're seeing all these videos of people keying Teslas, events around Teslas, anti-Elon stuff, and one of the Elon's friends and a billionaire out there in Silicon Valley who was a big lefty for a long time came out and said, I sat through President Trump's the State of the Union is in essence speech a couple weeks ago, and he said he saw these Democrats with these signs and they're all saying, Elon steals, and he's like, it finally hit me. They believe that. They believe Elon is stealing the money that's theirs. They think that money that they steal from the American taxpayer is their money, is what he said. This is David Sachs. I think his first name's David, and big crypto guy. And he says, that's not their money. This is the taxpayer giving to our government to do things, not for them to swindle. And so, anyways, that's why Elon's being attacked now, and it's happening, as you know, all over. We've got a guest coming on board. I'm really anxious to hear his points of views. We're going to take a quick break and on this subject matter because, and I don't even know if this guy's conservative at all, but he's got some real knowledge in this area. And so we'll take a quick break. We'll be back after that with Mr. Adam Swart. Can't wait to hear what he has to say. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joe Hoft. Are you looking for monthly income without the risk of stocks? Here's something you won't hear about on CNBC. There's a unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, drilling, or operational headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lechtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the number one oilty play for 2025. Visit HoftOilBoom.com now to learn more. That's HoftOilBoom.com, HoftOilBoom.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks now instead.
In every thread, in every stitch, Honor-Bound USA weaves the fabric of the American spirit. It's not just apparel, it's a testament to God, family, and country. At Honor-Bound USA, we're a family of patriots who put our faith, family, and America first. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act. As the official site for the Untamed podcast, all of our products proclaim speaking the truth with courage. We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Identify yourself as one of the few who are willing to stand for what they believe in. Join the Honor-Bound USA family today. Wear it as a badge of honor, commitment to the values that shape us, and a pledge to the bright future we will build together. Because when you're honor-bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle. Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF. What is DCF, you ask? We're the best damn sandwich shop in the universe. Do we sell hoagies? Well, we're DCF, and the F doesn't stand for hoagies. We got 9mm sandwiches, we got beastly baguettes, and we toast buns like no other. Looking for training on bun safety? We got you covered, and our ranges are the best place to test out your new Not sandwich. So get your buns out, cause the sun's out, and let's party! We're not actually a sandwich shop.
Hi, this is Joe Hoff. We are back, and a lot's going on. There's people starting to tear things up again. Where I guess I was waiting after the BLM riots of 2020, and actually after Trump's first term, his first administration. If you recall, those first days before he even took over, there was chaos across the country. Remember at airports, shutting down airports, people screaming. Had the pussy hat rallies on Inauguration Day. A lot of people were arrested that day. And then, quite frankly, Joe Biden comes in, and one of the first things he does on his first day is pardons all these people and rewards them with financial sums of money. And so that's what Trump endured. And now we're seeing. I'm not surprised at all. But we've got an expert here with us today who can fill us in a lot on all this. Is what I'm heard. I haven't heard him talk, but I'm really anxious to hear what he has to say. Adam Swart is with us. Adam, welcome to the Joe Hoff Show.
Joe, it's a pleasure to be on with you. And I've been listening already to this talk about Tesla, and I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe where liberals hate electric cars and conservatives hate processed foods. What with RFK? What are we doing here? They were it was the liberals defending Tesla and the conservatives calling Michelle Obama a Marxist for having a vegetable garden. And now we're really reversing roles here. It's pretty funny to see it work out. So anything that leads conservatives to like vegetables and like regulations on processed foods and to support green vehicles, I'm loving it.
Yeah. So, and I really think I don't know if that would happen without RFK, joining the Trump team. And when he did, I think more people on the right were more open-minded to some of his ideas. And now I think it's well, at least now it's on the conservative side. We want medications and vaccines that are safe, and we have more awareness on that since COVID. And that's where Bobby Kennedy became a hero too. A lot of us we didn't like Trump's position when he came out with COVID and the things he was doing. Then it got excessive from the people around him. Fauci, a lot of us don't believe, Fauci or Birx are good people at all. Yeah, should be arrested. So yeah, things have flipped. You're right. It's hard to keep up these days as far as what's on the right and what's on the left. What do they stand for? That's for sure.
Correct. And it's incumbent on voters to pay attention to candidates and their positions and hold them accountable, because you see so much reversing of previously held positions. That's not always a bad thing, by the way, to rethink it in light of what's going on. I mean, especially in regards to vaccines. And I think I'm happy that conservatives are seeing a lot of what the left has been saying previously about, hey, there's crap in our air, there's crap in our water, don't trust everything that the establishment says. I mean, that used to be the conservative position, would be defending the establishment. So I think it's very interesting to see it all shaking out. But what's going on with Tesla is insane. And the idea, these are tantrums. I mean, these aren't protests. When you see what's going on in terms of those Quebecois that you were showing who were destroying, vandalizing, defacing a Tesla facility. It's unacceptable. and there's no purpose, and it's ultimately going to have the reverse effect.
I think it will. I saw one guy, just some dude on, I think he was on TikTok, saying, an elderly male saying, well, when we don't like companies, we just like don't buy their product anymore, like Bud Light. Goes, when the
Yeah.
left doesn't like products, well, they just become ISIS and just start blowing everything apart. So um, that got a lot of traction, by the way, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Why don't you, Adam, tell us a bit about your background and how you got here today. What can you tell us?
Sure. Well, the reason I'm here is we're the biggest protest company in the country called Crowds on Demand. We put together demonstrations involving passionate supporters who support a particular cause. So we are the home, Crowds on Demand, for advocacy. So people give us the cause and we assemble supporters. Now, the people that we assemble are people who support the cause. We're compensating them to attend, right? And one of the big things to think about here is that, and I've said this a lot to my conservative friends, is that many people on the left can go out to these protests whenever they want. They don't necessarily have are less likely at least to have jobs and responsibility and families, right? But when you're someone who has a family and has to work to put food on the table, it's so important to be able to be compensated for expressing your views, because otherwise you just simply couldn't have the time to go out to these demonstrations and events. So I think it's a really important thing to actually compensate people for attending events and showcasing their views, just like talk show hosts, just like commentators, attorneys on both the left and the right are compensated for expressing their views.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought about that. I thought of, my position from the right would be, well, look, these guys are all AstroTurf. They're paid to be there. On the right, it's people driving miles to go see like a Trump rally someplace with, thousands, if not even 100,000 people at some of these events. So
Sure.
interesting.
Well, I guess the way that I look at it is that I don't actually believe that there's such thing as astroturf or grassroots. That's what I would consider a false dichotomy. The reality is every protest, every movement is to some degree paid for, and to some degree has people in it, right? Now, there could be a different proportion based on the movement, but for example, there's the fact that there's money behind a movement does not negate the value of the movement. So I'll use an example, right? In 2010, you had the Tea Party movement. That was a heavily funded movement by the Koch brothers, right? They were part of the inception of the Tea Party movement. Now, there were many people who genuinely supported the movement, but without the funding from the Kochs and others, it is very unlikely that the Tea Party would have been able to gain the traction it did to end up having the massive sweep in the 2010 midterm election, right? Similarly, I think that you don't have to agree with someone's views to say that their views might be genuinely held, right? So if now we're looking at the Tesla events, right? Of course there are paid protesters there. Of course there are. Of course. But those people believe what they are saying. I think they do. I think you can disagree with what they're saying, but I don't think that they are paid to believe it. I think they're paid to be there.
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting perspective because I had somebody on last week who I don't know if he'd agree with that statement or not. Owen Schroyer from Infowars was
Sure.
on. He just got swatted last week for his somebody called the cops, said he killed somebody, and
That
cops
is
show up at his place. You know the whole story. He had to crawl out of his house in the
I've
middle of the night. Yeah, and so, but he's been to a lot of these events on the left, and to me, it takes a lot of courage to walk into some of these events because some of these people, I think uh, I'm saying more on the left side, maybe you disagree, are violent. And he'd go in and he'd ask them questions. What are you protesting? just and put the mic in front of their face. And quite often, there was these people. Well, for one, people didn't want to say anything. For two, some of these people they didn't really know what they were. If when he'd asked like two questions, they didn't really know why they were there, indicating they were getting paid to be there. I haven't seen that on the right.
Well, I think that to be sure, you have the people like Antifa on the left, and a lot of those people are what I call professional agitators, right? These are people who they don't actually care about the issue. What they want is anarchy and destruction. So they will attach themselves to any movement that gives themselves license to burn things. So they don't care about racial justice, but they were there at BLM, right? They don't care about what's going on with Tesla, but they're there, right? They don't care about Israel, Palestine, but you see them there. Why? Because at any large scale event where they see the opportunity to create chaos, Antifa will be there. They are agents of chaos. I think to some degree they're funded, but I actually think a lot of these people are actually making their money looting on the side from these protests, right? So a lot of these people, they show up these protests because they see there's chaos. They're looting on the side. They're not, they have no particular care for that issue. They're not necessarily being paid by left-wing billionaires, but the part that's paid by left-wing billionaires is a separate part. And you were talking about 501c4s. Those are definitely funded by left-wing billionaires, or right-wing billionaires on the right. In fairness, I mean, they're billionaires on both sides. And whether like it or not, this is America, right? It's a capitalist country, and activism, both sides put a lot of money into policies, right? And you might agree with one side and disagree with the other side, but ultimately money is kind of a big part of our political dialogue.
Yeah. I was in St. Louis a few years back, and there were these Ferguson riots was the first thing. I think actually I was overseas in Hong Kong at the time, and my brother Jim was in St. Louis, and he was reporting on those. We had one guy provide some information to us that I thought was really important, and he said similar to what you were saying. So he even said he labeled even layers of this where there's money here, it goes to these people. These people then recruit others, pay them some money, but then that brings in other people that just show up that are happy to be there if there's some violence going on or whatever. And that's what we found in Ferguson. I remember one night there was a riot, and a bunch of people got arrested. I don't know, let's say 100, but maybe 99 out of the 100 were people that didn't live in Ferguson,
Sure.
So this
Well,
was all
as always,
lot piped in. Yeah.
as always, yeah, and Ferguson's a great example. I think that the reality is there are a lot of people who might be upset with the system in some way, but aren't able to articulate it, right? And they see things through whatever lens that they're told to see things through. So in regards to Israel Palestine, they recruited a bunch of BLM activists because they put these people don't know the nuances of Israel Palestine, but they say, hey, look, the Palestinians are oppressed in their region just as people of color are oppressed in the United States. And that struck a nerve with certain activists, right? And then they recruited those activists in that way, right? And I think that people can pretty easily be brought on board with a cause if you relate it to something that matters to them. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Where I see something wrong is when there's violence and when there's law breaking, right? And Crowds on Demand, we're the biggest protest company in the country, and we did not get there by breaking laws, right? Even if I had no moral problems with breaking the law, let's just say if I were a completely amoral person, it would not benefit me to break the laws for legal reasons, right? So we don't block streets, we don't vandalize, we don't block people's access to places, we don't create any violence. I ultimately think those tactics are counterproductive, because what I always tell clients is, what is your goal here? if your goal here is to convince people who are not currently on your side to join your side, how is making it impossible for them to get to their kids' school to pick them up going to convince them to see things your
Yeah.
way? It's not. So I
Yeah.
always say be respectful, even when the other side isn't respectful to you.
Mm.
And I will agree with you, Joe, that I'm an independent personally, but I have found that as a general fact, people on the right are a lot more respectful to disagreement than people on the left, because I think
Mm.
people on the left have a predisposition to moralize that
Mm.
and to immediately question the intent of anyone who opposes them. Whereas I think people on the right are more intellectually curious and say, let's hear your perspective. Let's talk about it, as opposed to saying you're racist, you're sexist, you're transphobic, you're bigoted, you're any sort of other ist, you're classist, ableist, whatever
Mm.
have you. And that's fundamentally unproductive. So I've
Yeah.
found that if you were to go to a Trump rally as a liberal, I think you'd be completely safe, because I think that you'd have a lot of people wanting to engage with you, disagree,
Yeah.
but I think it would be more respectful. Whereas if you went as a right winger to a BLM rally, as some
Yeah.
did, there were people who got beat up and hurt very
Yeah.
badly.
Oh yeah, maybe killed. I saw one incident in Black Lives Matter when that first stuff came out. There was a guy down in Texas. I said that guy didn't survive that. He was just surrounded by people kicking him, and at the
Yeah.
end, his body was just all in weird shapes. You're like, I don't. He didn't survive that. This weekend there was a similar. I'm anxious. I'd like to know how you started this, but before you answer that, I want to share this. Somebody sent me some information from Oregon over the weekend, and it was this group of individuals from United Sovereign Americans and Charlie Kirk's group. Um, you would know, you're out in Arizona.
Of
His
course.
his what's what's that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Anyways, his group, I think Heritage, just a bunch of people are going to this. Pretty much, it sounds like it's an old people's community in Oregon, and their clubhouse, and they were going to give some talks. Well, some people on Reddit on the left found out about it, and they flooded the phone lines at this place, and even threatened them, according to reports. And so the group there shut it down. They said, "No, you're not going to be able to hold your event this weekend, this Saturday at our place." But what was in one of the comments in Reddit that kind of grabbed me is the comments are, well, these people are they're calling the people that are giving the holding the event, again, probably some 60, 70 year olds, calling them Nazis, and this is outrageous. We're not going to let these Nazis into our neighborhood. But they don't realize that by their actions, who's more acting like Nazis, like
Sure.
what the Nazis did to people in Germany, any political people that were in opposition,
Sure.
who's more acting like the Nazis here? And yet that's the term that they use.
Sure.
I found it was like, this is backwards.
It's truly backward. I mean, Oregon, uh, not surprising, unfortunately. And my question is, who are you trying to convince, right? If I'm just looking at it pragmatically and you're upset at this conservative group that's presenting to these older folks, why not try to convince them? I've always told folks on the left, I said, look, if you want to convince people, talk about how Trump's policies are hurting them. Talk about how Trump's policies are going to be dangerous for them. Have that respectful dialogue, bring statistics, focus on the swing districts, right? They're not looking to do that because I actually think that some on the left prefer to be out of power. They actually don't want, they actually benefit, they profit from this outrage machine. And it actually behooves, especially these Antifa groups that essentially what they want is chaos. They would actually prefer to be out of power. So they don't want to convince people. They want to benefit from outrage and the chaos that would ensue.
That's interesting. You mentioned another thing. I was in Hong Kong during they called them, I think they called them protests, maybe riots. I think they called Hong Kong protests and the events in Ferguson. They called them both protests, as I recall.
Sure.
And I'm in Hong Kong. I'm over there, and I go over these bridges. What they did is they blocked down this major artery in and out of Hong Kong, which is on an
Yeah.
island, and it really made it an inconvenience for a lot of people to get where they were going because it just shut down that. And these students mostly put their materials on the road, and they had little makeshift desks that they built. And I'm taking pictures at night. They've got lights. They are studying. Okay, I have these
Wow.
tables on this road. Thousands of them, and the people were mostly supportive. I think because they were protesting China and some recent ruling that they'd made involving
Correct.
Hong Kong. At the same time, they're saying protests in Ferguson. And I'm seeing, Molotov cocktails and guys running around, you know, burning buildings down and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not a protest.
That's
This
not a
looks more like a
protest.
protest. That's a riot. And
That's not a
anyways, just
protest.
but
Yeah,
here's the point I'll finish on this. The point I'm making is in Hong Kong, they didn't have an exit strategy. So
no.
after about 2, 3 weeks, people are like, okay, clean it up, boys. We want to get back and forth for more. This is becoming an inconvenience. And they never thought through that. So there was something to that. I thought, you're right. You've got to have some sort of strategy behind this. You can't just protest in general. What are your thoughts?
Right. Well, I'll address two things. Number one, in Hong Kong, the deck was sort of stacked against them, right? Because the laws which were made by the PRC, People's Republic of China, are not really stacked again for any kind of due process or any sort of representation. So there was no one to convince, even if 99% of people in Hong Kong opposed what was going on with the PRC trying to take more control over the island, right? It just doesn't matter. And I think they actually in one sense accomplished their goals, which was they highlighted that Hong Kong is not necessarily what it was in regards
Right.
to it's no longer this SAR, as they call it, special administrative region. It's now really de facto a part of China, whether you like that or not. It is. China is basically saying we're not going to recognize the terms of the agreement that they made with the Thatcher government in the 80s, where they said that Hong Kong would have its own rules and its own laws. China is basically saying we're not going to abide by that. But the reality is China has sort of called the bluff and said, hey, nothing you can do about it. I mean, I guess the only thing you can do about it is not go there or not bring your dollars there, to the extent that that's something you want to do. Reasonable. In regards to the protests, I think one of the big things is I think it's very important to not call riots, vandalism, and violence protests, because the right of assembly is protected in the Constitution and cannot be violated. And to me, that's a holy right, is the right of free expression. And I thought there was massive overreach against free speech under the Biden administration. I also have concerns with certain actions of the Trump administration against free speech as well. And personally, I think it's very critical that we separate the actions of protesters from the actions of people who might share their beliefs but are doing illegal things. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you look at the 6th of January, you had a very zealous attack on a lot of the people. There were people who were violent in there, and those people should be prosecuted, right? But there was a failure to distinguish, in my opinion, certainly in the media, between the people who were trespassing and who were kind of just part of the group, and the people who were actually the instigators, right? And in America, in a free country, we are judged as individuals, right? And whether it's the right or left, I have a big problem with saying you were part of a protest where this violent thing got done, and therefore we're going to blame you for the violent thing that got done by someone else, right?
Mhm.
I didn't think that was appropriate when they did
Mhm.
it on January 6th. but I also don't think it's appropriate when the Trump administration is doing this in regards to some of the stuff on college campuses. I think you can have misguided views. We protect misguided views, right? The ACLU, in the case of Skokie versus Illinois, protected the right of neo-Nazi. Jewish ACLU lawyers protected the right of neo-Nazis to march through a village with Holocaust survivors. I mean, the most heinous, reprehensible act possible. Why? Because they knew that unless the most reprehensible forms of speech were protected, that all speech was vulnerable, right? So I think when Trump ran for office, he promised to be the most free speech president in history. And I encourage him to live up to that. And he's a tough guy. He can tolerate dissent. He should be able to tolerate views that he disagrees with. Rioters, punish them, but punish people for their actions. If you threw a Molotov cocktail, you should go to jail. If you vandalized Tesla, you should go to jail. But if you stood behind someone at a rally and you're holding a F Elon sign, that's legal. It's legal to say F Elon. Whether or not it's a stupid sign, that's a legal form of protest. And I wish this administration would be more vociferous about protecting the right of protesters, because I guarantee you, when the next Democrat administration gets into office, they're going to use whatever powers this administration takes, and they're going to use it against conservatives. And I think that conservatives are much better off in a free country where you protect the right of free expression.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. The point that we wouldn't agree on is the assessment of what happened. So with January 6th, I've had a number of these guys on my show. Some of the notorious names. Some of these guys that got 20 years. One guy wasn't even there. He got 20 years. You know, and they're trying to say there was this whole. Here's the thing that'll blow you away, Adam, is that I had 3 people on here over the last few weeks since the inauguration. 2 of the big names that got 20 years, both of these top guys told me that the DOJ came in and said, if you say that Trump, this is our DOJ, our Department of Justice, right? If you say that Trump was behind this and you were working for Trump to create a riot or, this insurrection was the term they were using of the United States government. If you say that, even though it's totally not true, they said, no, I didn't have any discussions with Trump or anybody related to Trump about me showing up there that day. We showed up. A couple of these groups were there to protect people. That was their mission, protect people from Antifa and such, because they saw conservatives getting beat up at some of their peaceful protests by people like Antifa. I guess that's who we thought it was. But anyways, these guys, 2 of them said they were told to do that, and their 20 years would get down to 2, and both refused. And so there's a lot of us, in my belief, and I've met a lot of these guys that were there. Some of these people walked in the Capitol and walked out. I don't even believe personally there was trespassing that day. There was no signage. There was nothing there to suggest that these people couldn't go inside and take a leak or whatever they needed to do.
Accessible building.
Right. And so they charged them with that, and then they added more to it. It was I tell you what, there was a poll by Rasmussen, who I think is a pretty good polling company. And you may agree or not, but they came out a year or so after that 65% of Americans, not due, I'd say, to the mainstream media, but to sites like this and the Gateway Pundit, that believed that the January 6th was a setup. I think there was a lot of people that were enticed into radical acts. A couple of guys I've had on here saw a lady getting just mutilated by these cops, and they said stop, and they didn't stop, and so they jumped in and felt it was their duty to help what they thought at the time was protect her. So a lot of stuff happened that day, like you said. You can't blame
Joe,
everybody there.
This is my skepticism with continuing to give power to the government. It's never given back. Freedom is never given back. Once we give it away, it's done, right? So when you look at the mechanism that was used, the entrapment part, that was started under the Bush administration to come after Muslims, right? They would do the same thing
It
that
goes
the
back to the 1960s,
sure, yeah, civil rights stuff.
and that was LBJ and others.
Hoover.
I remember what John Kerry. They were focused on one of his groups. They infiltrated those groups
Yeah.
with feds. So they've been doing this a long time,
It's a
right?
dangerous precedent. I mean, I think it's important to have undercover agents that are looking at these things, but to the extent that they're encouraging otherwise peaceful demonstrators to do something violent and then saying, "Oh, well, you did something violent,"
Yeah,
that's completely unacceptable.
yeah,
And really a violation of free speech. And I don't care whether it's done to conservatives or it's done to
right.
Muslims and I don't want it being done to anyone because frankly I think it's important that the government, and I hope the new director of the FBI, Patel, puts an end to this practice of
Yeah,
entrapping people
yeah, me
in that
too.
manner.
Me
I
too. And one last question. We're going to be we'll have to close out here in a minute or so, but what are some of the big names that you've represented, your firm's represented? Is there any that we'd recognize?
Well, probably, but we don't typically talk about
Uh,
our customers on air. But what I will say is that it's definitely a mix of liberals and conservatives. What I like to say is I like to be the spokesperson for the underdog, right? Because a lot of times we like to bring to light issues that otherwise are not getting enough attention, are not being conveyed in the right way. Typically, a lot of times people who bring us in are people who are kind of fighting a uphill battle and are bringing us in to try something different. So, we've run a lot of very effective campaigns on the right. We've run some effective campaigns liberal. I mean, I consider myself an old school liberal. I want clean air and clean water and I don't want people dying because they can't get health care. But I don't agree with the crazy stuff that's going on at all. But I also am a free marketer. So I welcome a lot of kind of those types of campaigns, and it's fun. But if you ever see anything illegal, it's not us because we don't affiliate ourselves with any of that crap.
that's great. I tell you what, it's been an eye opener really chatting with you today. It's been an honor, a really unique perspective. I'm sure people listening in are like, wow, this is unique. Check this guy out. So, Adam, how can people follow you and your organization?
Well, sure. www.crowdsondemand.com, crowdsondemand.com. You can also follow me on X/Twitter at CEO Adam Swart. That's Swart. I have some thoughts. I try not to be too active on Twitter responding to things, but sometimes I'm very pro free speech. That's the one thing where I just feel that right and left can agree on that. If we can at least agree on protecting our free speech, I'm trying to build consensus. The kind of campaigns that I want to do in this next few years when we're so divided is bring consensus because I'm so fortunate to have friends, family on the right and on the left, and I love them all. And I want to bring back that American spirit. And however I can do that will be my honor. And Joe, it's an honor to be on your show and
Hmm.
engage with your viewers. And maybe I'll come back if people have any questions that they feel went unanswered today, and I can answer them.
Great. No, thanks so much for your time. Really enjoyed it. We'll have to have you back soon. Really appreciate it. Well, we'll
Thank
see. Another big protest or riot starts. We can have some discussions on that.
That's probably, unfortunately, very likely.
Yeah, I agree. Anyways, thanks so much, Adam. Have a great day. Appreciate you joining us.
You too.
We'll be back tomorrow on the Joe Hoff Show here on Untamed Nation. Appreciate your support and all that you do to help us. So take good care. Have a great day. We'll see you then.